So let's look at that passage at the bottom of page 104. He says, "We began with the lowest form of despair, which in despair did not want to be itself. The demonic despair is the most heightened form of the despair, which in despair wants to be itself. This latter despair does not even want to be itself in stoic self-infatuation and self-exaltation. It is the despair of wanting to be yourself, or in despair wanting to be yourself, is not loving yourself. It's not, I'm so great, or how could anyone improve over this self? It's not that at all, he says. Not even in that, no doubt, mendacious way, but one that in a certain sense conformed to its own ideal of perfection. No. This demonically despairing self, it wants to be itself in hatred towards existence, to be itself according to its misery. It does not even want defiantly to be itself, but to be itself in sheer spite." To be itself in sheer spite. That is, I will be this self in sheer spite, it does not even want to sever itself defiantly from the power which established it. Now, he seems to be contradicting himself. It doesn't want to sever itself from the power that established it. That seemed to be what he was saying before, but he seems to be getting at something different here, slightly different. He wants in sheer spite to press itself on that power, importune it, hang on to it out of malice. That is, he's obviously, I think, talking about the individual self's intimate relationship with God. And although he earlier said that the despair of defiance is an attempt to sever oneself from the power that established you, to sever yourself in an expression of your own independence from God, basically. Here, he says the despairing self doesn't want to deny God, wants to hang on to God, the way that a child might hang on to its mother when it's whining and complaining, to hang on to it out of malice, bad feeling, resentment. And that is understandable. A malicious objection must of all things take care to hang on to that to which it is an objection. I need God there to defy God, because it's defiance that I want. I need God there to object to God because of the objection that I want. Rebelling against all existence, it thinks it has acquired evidence against existence, against its goodness. That is, we think that we have acquired the evidence that God really messed up. And what is this evidence that God messed up? The despairer thinks that he himself is this evidence. That is, look at me if you want to see God's mistakes. And it is and it is this that he wants to be. This is the reason he wants to be himself in his agony, so as to protest with this agony against all existence. As the weak despairer will hear nothing about what comfort eternity has in store for him, so too with this despairer, but for a different reason. The comfort would be his undoing. That is, the demonic despair, this is the most heightened form of despair, the most heightened form of self-awareness, where one is still in despair, at least, the most heightened form of self-awareness. And really, what does that mean? The individual is aware, to a great extent, of his true situation, which, according to Kierkegaard, is what? Being in the presence of God, being in a relation that relates to itself, and through relating to itself relates to something else. It's not as if that relation now is full or healthy, but there is some sort of relation to God, and a resentment, a fear of God. What's the big fear? The big fear is that one may perhaps have to be the self that God has made you, and that may not be the most pleasant thought for the despairer. The comfort would be his undoing. Salvation, love, being healed of all that suffering would be his undoing. Again, if you take away my suffering, what do I have left? Who am I? Would I even recognize myself? The comfort would be his undoing, as an objection to the whole of existence. And here's the kicker, I think, at the end. It is, to describe it figuratively, as if a writer were to make a slip of the pen, and the error became conscious of itself as such. It's a crazy idea that if the author makes a slip of the pen and then his mistake becomes a conscious being, that's us. That's us. That's the miracle of being a self. That is something created which is aware of itself. And the error became conscious of itself as such. Perhaps it wasn't a mistake, but from a much higher point of view, an essential ingredient in the whole presentation. That is, maybe we lack the perspective to see that we're not a mistake. And as if this error wanted now to rebel against the author, out of hatred for him, forbid him to correct it. And in manic defiance, say to him, no, I will not be erased. I will stand as a witness against you, a witness to the fact that you are a second-rate author. This reluctance or refusal, really, to be changed, or to be changed in the sense of, in Kierkegaard's, I think, analysis, to be changed in the sense of becoming who you really are. This reluctance is holding on to something that is obviously perceived to be of value of itself, and that may be the self's deep flaws, its mistakes, its suffering, its pain, and a resentment, bad feeling towards the power that would do the changing, which would mean taking away that pain. So that here we have despair in its purest form, which entails a great deal of self-awareness and truth about one's situation. And what is this attitude of defiance against God? Well, we turn the page, we turn 105, we start part 2, and we find, oh, despair is sin.